Call to order special school board work session of May 26th.
The board members who are present, please respond. Mr. Coleman. Mrs. Larson. Mr. Sturtevant. Mr. Gray. Mr. Bourne. Mrs. Taylor. Mrs. Harris Muhammad. Dr. Jones. Ms. McNair. Here. Mr. King. Next item is to receive and discuss updates on the FY 2016 general fund and CIP budgets.
We made one minor change.
Yes.
Can I see all of the presentation from earlier, please?
Can repeat everything you said.
Dan, it's right there. No, it'll be fairly quick. So with the revenue recap of where we are, we've cut our fund balance, one-time usage of fund balance by 2.3 million, so that was a reduction in resources for next year. Our city transfer was an amendment to this year's budget for the truancy program of $1,541,850. But when the mayor proposed his budget, he goes from adopted budget to adopted, not amended to adopted. So that was a part of his $2.1 million increase. Then there were state revenues. We had a reduction overall of state revenues of $192,000, and other local revenue reduced by $159,000, leaving us with a $1.1 million reduction overall in net revenues as the time you submitted the budget on March 3rd when you approved it to send to city council and the mayor. Since then with the mayor's proposal, he added another $638,000 on top of the $1,541,000 in his proposed budget, and then council appropriated $9 million on the 15th, and then we had a revised enrollment projection and then all this is predicated on information that came in since the March 3rd submission. So with the March 31 ADM, our enrollment is sufficient for us to feel like we can increase our enrollment projection on the basis of revenue next year. We have to plan for enrollment in accommodating the students that arrive in September, but we only get paid on the average of the number of students who attend through March 31 over a 7-month period. There's usually a 98% differential between the September 30th and the March 31 number. So we have to be a little conservative on the revenue side. It doesn't always match what we're putting in, where we have to accommodate expenditures for what we plan to receive in students in the fall. So we added $872,000 to state revenue by increasing the enrollment projection for revenue purposes by 190 students. State revenue loss, we had to reduce $489,000 because there's a early reading math program that requires hiring specialists. We had 13 budgeted for $1 million, 1.1 million. But it requires hiring people who have a master's degree in reading and math who want to work 28 hours a week. It's an almost an impossibility to find them. We advertised 3 times this year and couldn't fill those positions, and the state's rule was if you didn't participate in the program in this year in 15, then you're not eligible for the funding in 16. So we took that money out. So we took the $1 million out on the expenditure side, take $489,000 out on the revenue side. It's about a $600 net change reduction in the budget overall. All right, so then we had the other adjustments that you made back March 3rd, the $5.7 million to the rest of the budget, which adds to the resources. So back up to the top a little bit. Our net revenue change increase then, with all of those factors considered up above, is $8.9 million change in our revenue resources, giving us a projected budget next year of $271.5 million. And then, so then we add the $5.7 million of expenditure reductions to that $8.9 million. We've got $14.6 million to apply to new expenditures. On top of that, since March 3rd, we've closed Elkhart Middle School into Thompson. That saved $701,000 in personnel and staffing resources, plus another $115,000 you'll see later in the utilities area. $816,000 saved overall from the closing of that school. So that gives us $15,390,000 total to work with. And then we start looking at what are the new expenditures for next year that we have to cover with that $15,390,000 of new revenue. And the first thing that's going to come off the top is the truancy transition for the $1,848,000. It's the $1,541,000 they transferred this year, plus $300,000 increase in the things we needed to round out that program as we described it to them when they transferred it to us a year ago. And the resources we would need to run that program adequately. We needed the $1,848,000. Health insurance increase this year, $1,600,000. We're into the rest of these things in the green area. Utility increase, $676,000. That was increased by $115,000, but because of the Elkhart closing, we reduced that number by $115,000. So the $676 is the reduced number. No, it isn't. I'm gonna go back to the summary sheet. That's what I'm working with. There we go. All right, so this sheet is giving you this summary recap of everything. Go ahead and move up one. Okay, so we're at the item number 3 for the utility increase. Can almost read that. Enlarge it a little bit. At the bottom. There we go. Okay. Utility increase, $561,000. That's the net of the $115,000. Mandates for workers' compensation increases, so forth, $991. No changes there. Maintaining current service levels. These are things that we're spending money on that we just haven't been budgeted over in the past years. So the things that we've been trying to absorb only through salary lapse and turnover at the end of each year is the only things that's saving us on these items. Charter school, there's a $578,000 increase there year over year. Last year we had to add some funds to that because of the $4.5 million that got added at the end of the year from the council, $4.7 million. And their allocation is based on a per pupil allotment, so as our local funds are appropriated and increase, their per pupil amount increases commensurately for the 300 students that we're projecting there. Maggie Walker school tuition increased slightly. There was $40,000 increase for that one. Warehouse closing, that's for clerical finance positions that are one position that's going to cover paying 10,000 invoices that we're going to now have to process because we're now closing the warehouse. So we would have had to have increased the budget by $500,000 if we didn't close the warehouse, because there would need 4 full-time warehouse staff that were eliminated 2 years ago. Driver's ed class, that's a half of a specialist position that we used to cover half of that position out of the driver's ed fund to save money in the general fund. The driver's ed fund's not adequate to fund that anymore. So again, it's money that we're budgeting so that we've got it covered in the general fund where it's going to be paid. Technical corrections of the salary, just an error basically in putting the budget together. We had to correct that, $78,000. Security enhancements, we added 2 clerks. We can actually reduce that. That was a little
We've included that in the 701, so.
Oh, it's in there 701, okay. All right, so part of the way we're going to fund that 141, one of those positions of the 2 additional security guards at Huguenot High School will come from the $701,000 decrease we saw earlier from closing Elkhart into Thompson. We're going to take 1 security position from Elkhart Thompson combination and move it to Huguenot to cover one of those positions. But that's in the 701 we've already added. So she's reminding me I can't count that twice. Exceptional ed, compliance and other initiatives. We've got a separate detail sheet we've broken out to show you on that. We'll come back to that. $2.6 million, and that was decreased by $240,000 because we had a retirement since the budget was approved. We're going to cover the director of exceptional ed and one of the teacher positions by reallocating resources from existing positions. Bilingual initiative, we had an error in there of $108,000. We budgeted meant to budget $12,000 for some laptops, and we put $120,000 in there. So we could reduce that by $108,000, it's a correction. So that's the new number for that. Okay, so K through class size, no change there. That's to add the additional positions at the K through level based on poverty, to reduce the class size down to 14-to-1 ratio. Technology support initiative, division-wide, $1,915,000. That was reduced by, in part, additional fund. We have a telecommunications audit that was just finished a couple of weeks ago. The results said we have about $225,000 in savings. We feel comfortable in claiming $175,000 of that for next year's budget. They may challenge the vendor may challenge a couple of the reductions that the company found, and if we end up having to pay a little more, then we don't want to take 100% of it at this point.
250 versus what it is.
225.
225.
We're taking 175 of that. And in fact, today we found one that was a cutoff that really shouldn't have been cut off. It was the superintendent's phone in his conference room. So we were claiming.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. So that's an example of why we
Who
don't.
runs that department? When is he here today?
No, it was the external vendor who told us that was a safe line to eliminate.
Oh.
When in fact it wasn't. They usually go around and test them all, so hopefully there aren't many more of those. All right. So that brings us down to $454,000 remaining of the $15 million. Once we apply it to all of the items in green, and then we're down to the Benford Fine Arts model, which we also reduced by $500,000 from SIG funds. We've got some leniency from the state in applying school improvement grant monies there, so we can reduce the cost of that program by $585,000. So that gets us down to the $596 that's remaining. That leaves us $141,000 shy at this point of covering that, which I'm sure we can. To do the AIP, we reduced the 5 days to 3 days, which qualifies for the state's 1.5% increase for teachers. There's 3 days increase on their 191-day contract of 4.57%. So that qualifies to get the state's million. And then on top of that, we would need, so that's $1.5 million. And then the academic improvement plan itself, the other components of it is $2.2 million. That takes us to $3.8 million. And then the state requires that we give 1.5% to all the non-teaching positions, the ones that aren't using PD days, because we have to give the 1.5% to get the state's million. It costs us $983,000 to do that, so basically it's a wash. We take the state's money, and we don't take it, we don't get the 1.5. It's 6 and 1.5 the other. So there's really no reason not to do it. Right. And so that would put us at $4.8 million if we had the resources to go that far in the program. And then we have all the other things down below from items. There's the early reading initiative math program I spoke about earlier. We eliminated the revenue for it, eliminated the expense here too in item 20. And then items 21 through 33 would add $2.7 million more to the tally for a $7.6 million bottom line now, where we had a $24 million gap before. We're at $7.6 million now from the funding that we've been appropriated for FY16. That's the extent of the comments, and we can answer questions and dig into other details as we go.
Thank you, Mrs. Sturzman.
Do we have the 2% raise option in here? I see the 1.7, I don't see the 2%.
The 2% we did have on the sheet was $3 million, right?
Can we add that to this chart as an option?
We can. There's no, we don't get the state $1 million if it's done as a bonus. Is that what we're talking about, a bonus?
Well, I mean, Chesterfield and Rico did a 2% raise, didn't they?
Right.
So what, can we match that? Does that get the $1 million?
It would get the $1 million.
Yeah, that's all.
And it would add another. If we add 0.5%.
Can we get a consensus on that?
No, that's not definitive.
Oh, just, okay,
Teachers.
I just
see it.
944,000. If we bump the 1.5% to 2%, it'd be 944,000. On top of what we have here.
So,
Yeah, no, I'd make it, well, I mean, we can just make a note of it on the side there, actually, put down for more. Let's just put it out to the side at 19. 944,000. Let's make a note in. Call it out there, 2%.
Okay, Ms. Taylor?
There were a couple of things that I had mentioned at previous work sessions, budget work sessions, regarding SAT prep classes for students, specifically under the capital umbrella, school uniforms, and things like field trips. Are those pulled through other financial sources to accommodate without having to go directly into the budget?
We'd have to do some research on the cost of them to know.
There should be some research because these are things that have been a part of discussion for the last couple of years. So there should be some data already out there, primary administration, as well as administration. For field trips? Field trips, AP, courses specifically under the capital umbrella is one request, as well as software for foreign language classes to incorporate into the curriculum instruction. Is there a part of
AIP,
title?
yeah, all of those, most of those things are already in there.
Okay.
You don't have the money for the AIP things. Because you had the
Yeah,
advanced placement, and online courses are all.
right. Advanced Path, Apex, blended learning, all of those were part of AIP.
Okay. For school field trips, is there a part of the Title I funding that allows specifically for field trips, not just for Title I students, but for a school that is a school-wide or
Well, I mean, if it's
partial
tied to
funding?
an academic program, you can use your.
You can
Title
use
I
them,
funds.
right, okay.
They just talk about what not to do anymore because people are.
Doing what, right, yeah. So maybe that, Ms. Kane, could,
Yeah, and also, they may not have funding to fund all of the field
no,
trips that they wanted.
certainly.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be stated that we have used some Title I funding for specific field trips tied to SOL curriculum and for students that specifically targeted students that are, struggling, like taking them to the Science Museum for academic, training or whatever they've done in the past since we've been on the,
So-
I can't remember
You had audit.
some of
report, if you remember
titles.
trying to say cut $1 million, you save in transportation.
Right.
We pushed back and said, no, that's the money that goes to.
Right, that's-
Math science.
Math Science Center, right, they didn't know that at
Science
first,
Museum
right,
and other
right.
places like that. As soon as you-
I just wanted it to be known that that is what.
Yeah, we'll cover everything, but there is money, we spend a lot of money on field trips.
Still,
Just need more specificity because school uniforms are coming back to the agenda next month. Where could those funds possibly come from?
Be some alternate source, reallocation of this thing.
Because it would be an additive, a separate line item. added on. Is there an estimate that we can put in place to have the best available? Do you have the recommendation?
I think, maybe wrong with language out there, but I think you have process statement on individual schools that go through a process if they want to consider moving. That is not very district directive.
I think
You're doing it from memory, but you all, I think, adopted a process.
The new process has been adopted, but the state guidelines basically talk about having it generally as a school-wide initiative versus district-wide initiative. And I think some time ago, previous administration brought forward at least an overview of that. So I guess whether it's division-wide or whether it's school-based, the process involves more of gathering parent information, public hearings, those types of things. So it's an elongated process. And so I guess I would speak at the time then.
Okay, I know we've already had a public hearing on the subject matter. We have, it was early on in 2013,
No, we
first
haven't.
year. We did have a public hearing on 2013.
On school uniforms?
On school uniforms, yeah, because I remember the crowd and I remember the comments.
We did not.
I thought it was there, 2013 school uniforms. We didn't have not a public hearing, but we had it was a school, it was a presentation with a school board meeting, but it wasn't a public hearing. Okay, can we do some research on that?
All right,
I'm pretty sure that people come to the podium and
we
speak
will
directly.
research that, but at this point,
I know it's been a
that's
while,
where it
but
would be.
it's 2013.
all right? Thanks, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Epps?
Mr. Westbay, did you get a message earlier, and are you able to provide the detail that you rolled up into our baseline number? If you recall during our last conversation, there was, you said just some things rolled over. They just automatically rolled over, and that was the baseline number that we started to use. And so I was just wanting to have that detail as to what items rolled over into this budget. Like some of our partners, some of the contracts, things we've talked about before.
We prepared a contract, I emailed it to everybody about an hour ago. The list of existing contracts that we have, but it's not necessarily going to be grouped in any sort of a,
You have to turn yourself on inside.
in any sort of a group or categorical classification. It's just a list of every contract we have.
It has the money amounts inside.
Where it's appropriate. A lot of those contracts are where they've secured the contract amounts for quantity, and then the amount of the contract ultimately could be dependent on how many items any of the school departments order on the contract.
Okay. Follow up. Over down to the right there, I saw where it said there was some savings with the Elkhart Thompson merger.
Right.
I just don't recall seeing that before. But
701,000. No, that's
So,
new information.
are we gonna lose a security officer by this combined, what is,
No, we're gonna be able to reallocate one to Huguenot. So we needed 2 new at Huguenot High School, so we're gonna cover one of those for reallocation from Elkhart Thompson.
okay, maybe this is for another time, but we're not, all the security staff that currently are at Thompson and at Elkhart, they'll come together, we're not gonna lose anybody.
No, one of those will only be transferred to Huguenot High School. They won't need the combined number at the new combined facility
Okay, and
that they had for the 2 separate schools.
is that the same for the custodian position that was there?
Yes.
How many custodians were at Alcott? 2,
1.5.
1.5.
Yes, how many custodians are there?
Well, in both the security and custodial, it's the lead positions. We don't need 2 lead positions, so that's the position, and we've talked to both leads and particularly the ones at Thompson for both the security and the custodian. We feel like that's a good move, and we can move them over to you.
The custodian as well.
Custodian and the security
right.
too.
Okay.
And with those 2 schools being by each other, if we do encounter any issues, we can move
They're just
staff
right
from one
next
school
door.
to another. They're right next door.
Vaughn, followed by Mr. Sturman.
Thank you. I have a series of questions, Mr. Coleman, if I might. On number 5 in the green, maintain current service levels. Can you just give us a few examples of sort of what those mean?
So this is based on the actual levels of things that we're currently spending money on. So part-time driver's ed. What?
Plus foreign language in elementary school.
Right.
We overspend every year.
354,000 for that foreign language for the elementary schools. Testing part-time staff, $65,000
Testing part-time where? Sorry.
here in the
In the
testing
building.
division.
And that's part-time?
Homebound instruction, sub-clerical, hearing officer, drivers, non-contract driver ed. No, non-contract bus drivers, that's what that is. Bus monitors, non-contract, sub or part-time custodians, security part-time, hearings for the board docs. What is that? Local match for security grant. 25,000 legal services, 50,000. What's that? HR.
Yeah, HR background check.
So,
Contract nurse service. So those are all things that we're paying on an annual basis, year in, year out. We just are not budgeting.
and so how have we been,
Through lapse and excess turnover funds have been left at the end of the year. But as we ratchet this budget down, we tighten it up every year. We got $700,000 out of the early retiree program funds last year. We got, it's getting tighter and tighter. And right now, we projected this budget this year to end on a zero, done. And it's just good, by not having those things adequately budgeted, it just leaves us hanging.
and so I guess this is probably my ignorance, but a lot of times we get budget transfer requests that we have to approve, and maybe it's just for this particular line item, it's contracted services generally, and it's accurate specifically for like speech and those, it's not a general category of contracted services where it would include, what the contracted services are up there, or is it all contracted services that we're doing?
No, usually it's for specific areas and items, like the ones that we've sent recently from exceptional ed to cover OTPT services, speech services and things like that. These are mostly non-contract staff, it's part-time staff, overtime, extra runs for the drivers, those kind of things. And it's providing the service levels we're currently providing, the budget just hasn't been adequately reflecting reality of what we're doing.
Okay. Item number 6, the Patrick Henry Charter School. This number is based on their projected enrollment in September.
Yes, sir.
And last year during the budget time, we had a lengthy discussion about they projected enrollment in years past, hadn't met those enrollment projections, and we just sort of lost that money. And so is there a true up that will happen? And then, so this is worst case scenario based on the projection.
We agreed last year if there's anything left, that would be considered in their balance.
And then, if I might, Mr. Chairman, number 12, exceptional ed compliance and improvements. Which ones are compliance issues where we absolutely have to do them, and which ones are the ones where we made a judgment where we'd like to make some improvements?
Okay. And I'll leave it up to Dr. Boyd to supplement here, but these are, we opened up a sheet that has the details relating to each of those accounts. So printing and binding was $49,000. And we're saying student conduct books, RPS calendars, I'm not sure.
So some of those things like the score, printing of the score, printing of calendars, eventually we want to be able to be all digital. and eliminate paper, but we realized we can't do that just at the snap of the finger because we would potentially eliminate access for some of our families. So we reduced that number from previous years in hopes of encouraging more folks to access the digital platform, but still realizing we'll need to have some paper copies. Some of the things that were things like open enrollment applications, again, we have online, but we do have a number of families that prefer to use the paper copy, and so we have to make those things available. The things that are compliance issues are things like those speech services, anything that's related to an IEP, nursing services, speech services. Some of the technology that we also incorporated there is for also required services in the IEP. We're going to have Language Lab to be used as our multi-sensory reading instruction program, which is a blended learning model. So the teacher does some of the instruction and some of the instruction is computer. So again, that's tied to the IEP. So that's some of the difference between compliance
and I guess what's the breakdown from a dollar perspective? How much is our compliance costs? How much are our improvement costs?
And we can provide that for you so you can see it more black and white because it's kind of grouped here.
Right.
That's not a problem.
Good. So, Paul, can I piggyback on your question? One of the things we're trying to close the gap on with the printing piece was because people didn't have access to computers. How much of that now, because and Patricia, you might need to jump in, are we able to incorporate? Because one of the reasons we went to the mobile app was we knew more people had phone. So are we able to factor in when you do the non-compliance stuff, any of those things that if the board reduced them more, can they work on the mobile app access to just to add potential to
We can
reduce
look at
costs?
that, but we did eliminate, I can tell you, we did reduce the amount allocated for school and things like that from the previous year. I'm pretty much assuming that some people would prefer the soft copy, but we can give you a breakdown so you can see what we exactly have to do and what would be considered an enhancement, if you will.
Well, I just don't know that, the next however long we have here together, I'm going to get to have that breakdown to make an informed decision because one of the things that I think I'm struggling with is not being able to pay for the academic improvement plan, which we have all bought into lock, stock, and barrel. And I think by our unanimous vote, it's an indication that we believe it's the right plan, it's the right guiding principle and document for the school division to move where it needs to be. And, so when we suggest that things are compliance related, that to me means mandatory. We don't have any options like, we don't have the option for paying to workers' comp. We don't have any option to pay for, whatever, I think there was a OCR settlement that we have to do. An increase in utility costs, we don't control that. We have to pay our bills on it. Now, not suggesting that this is a path forward, but on the healthcare insurance increase, are we legally required to cover the cost for our employees? That, no, from a legal perspective, but from a moral obligation, I think because of the history over time, I think that's the right thing to do. So that's why I'm just looking for the breakdowns, what's absolutely required of us.
And that was discussed at council too, about potentially splitting the increase with the employer.
And maybe that's not a good example, but I think to the extent we're not able to give raises, I think covering the cost of the healthcare is, I hope it's a demonstration of good faith, but I'm looking at ways to try and squeeze every nickel out of things that we've got to make a judgment call on, where we've already made a judgment call on the academic improvement plan. A lot of people spend a lot of hours working on that, and we're going to be judged by academic progress, not whether or not we fix technical corrections or reclassify driver's ed to the general fund. I'm sure those are important from a structural perspective, but when we're judged 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, it's going to be, did Dr. Bedden move this district forward academically? Did this board create the culture and the climate to allow the administration to succeed? And in changing the outcomes of our BS students. And so that's where I'm coming from in these sort of questions. So it's not personal, not second guessing work. But again, I would have that same sort of question with the technology support initiatives. I mean, I know we've got licenses and those are like bills you have to pay. But are there things that we're doing that we can delay or might be able to get in kind of partnership? I mean, so that's sort of my general tenor of questions. What is it we absolutely have to do? Then we can make informed decisions. But it's just sort of.
Larson.
I think Mr. Sterling.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling was next.
Question, Mr. West. I'm visual, and so it'd be helpful, you had sent around a worksheet of this priority budget, so we could change the ranking. And I had a hard time doing it on my computer. Are you able to pull that up? Because it'd be helpful visually for me to see where we are numbers-wise. If we were to, Mr. Horn suggests, prioritize the academic improvement plan, pay for it, and prioritize, in my view, a raise of some sort. Is that something that we can do real quick for my benefit of seeing this on the screen?
Yeah, we'll probably pull that out. Let's go back to that. Well, she's gonna go look up some additional information like social ed. I'll park it here, we can bring that back. We also have another sheet on the technology with the details of that. We can explain what's in there. Let's see if you want to go through that detail in a moment to see. I mean, in answering your question about are there things that we could defer, and it comes down to in 27.
The worksheet from the other day may not have the updated numbers. So we look at the worksheet that we were just looking at a minute ago.
Sure.
Copy and paste it to some other cells and use it as a draft.
Probably. Which? Oh, it's in the 26.
We have to adopt this by the 31st. Is that right?
Well, we can't send contracts or do anything until you've adopted. So that's our deadline. There's not a date specific.
No, I was just asking.
So the initiative worksheet that you sent them, where they could change.
So that won't have the updated
the
numbers.
ranking.
Can we look at the spreadsheet that we were just looking at 90 seconds ago? So I'm wondering what these numbers look like if we move Bedford basically 16 through 19. If we prioritize
Well, I
them.
mean, right there, it's 1.5 million plus 2.2 million plus 983,000 for
Right.
17, 18, and 19.
There's a reason I went to law school and not to
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Can we
$4.8
go-
million.
Right. Can we copy and paste that, and can we change the order of this? Because in my view, academic improvement plan should be 1, Binford should be 2, and so, and then we go on from there. Those seem to be the priorities that Mr. Corn points out that we're going to be judged on whether the school system moves forward.
It's all related to this.
Okay, Ms. Larson.
Okay, so, and we talked a little bit about this last time I was here, when it was me and Glenn and Don. 19 and 17 go together, correct? I mean, they have to go together to get the million.
17
from
and
the
19
state.
go together. Correct?
Yeah, is that what I said?
Yes.
Okay. And then, is the academic improvement plan interlinked with the 3 professional development days?
We pulled them out so that we could do exactly what we're doing right now. So it's
Right.
not twice in there. It's
But I guess what I'm saying is, what if we only funded 18? Could you do 18 without the 3 professional development days? Or, you see what I'm saying?
But what we were trying to show was that 17 is connected to the increase.
The 19,
raise,
yep.
Which we get the match from the state.
Right, yep, I
So,
get all that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, with the AIP, how, I mean, is it even worth it to fund the AIP if you don't have the professional development days? Like, so you get some sort of program, okay? We get it for the system to do, you know, whatever, to show our teachers how to break down the data. Well, what if we don't have the time to teach them how to use the program?
Well, there are things that we can do that do not require that type of professional development. So the enhancements to the curriculum, we could try to do some things, you know, during the school day, which then means that we're going to need to pull teachers out of class, which then means what? We got to get subs. So that's an expense on the other side. So we're
Right.
trying to avoid, you know, incurring expenses in 2 different areas.
Right. Sorry, Glenn, I wasn't trying to jump in there, but I thought it was relevant.
Yeah, it is. It's just not an easy answer to it.
And then I guess, and I'm sure everyone will correct me, but the AIP on number of professional development days, had that professional development been programmed? Is that something different? Like those 3 days, is day 1 X, day Y, Z, and day 3 B?
That was the plan. So you will
So we already know what those were going to be.
Yeah, and that was the plan. So we were giving the first day to the school so that teachers report back to school at their location and not to some other places. And the principals were going to be doing some professional development with their staff there. And then the next 2 days were going to be district-wide professional development, which is absolutely, there's an agenda, they're going to do boom, 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 yes.
And so I'm pretty sure we already have PD days built into the current calendar, whether we do anything different or not. And so couldn't we adopt that model into the current PD days and still get the enhanced, or these are my words, not a higher quality or more focused PD that we're talking about for the academic improvement plan by just not doing any additional days, but reconstituting the days we do already have?
And we've allotted for some of that. You'll recall that some of the days, the 2-hour early dismissals are teacher work days if it's right at the end of a marking period so they could do report cards and what have you. And then some of the days are professional development days, some at the school, some district-wide. So the answer to the question is yes. It wouldn't be nearly as focused or as directed because the time that we'd have is short. There'd be a day in October that is a full day, but short of that, pretty much that's the only full day that we have.
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Muhammad and Ms. Gray. I'm sorry.
There you go. Go ahead.
In regard to the technology, does that include the additions that are needed at some of the schools? Again, I need the Richmond community, the 8,000 of them. The only thing they mentioned in the report was that they needed major enhancements in their technology and their wiring and things of that sort to run them up to a high-speed capacity. Is that incorporated in that number?
Our personnel, yes, ma'am.
Okay, does that include any of the other schools, comprehensive school centers that have some type of upgrades?
Yes, ma'am, all schools.
All schools get that, okay. Thank you.
Can I ask my question about the change budget up here, the rank order? That's what I was asking Ralph to do.
Are we going to
be able to
say?
follow up.
All right. Ms. Muhammad, Gray, and Ms.
You want to ask your question?
All right.
All right. So, Mr. Westbay, this ranks Binford Fine Arts and the Academic Improvement Plan and a salary raise.
16,
Top.
right, 16 through 19 are at the top. When we start with truancy transition, there, everything else in that order. We run out of money for exceptional ed compliance, we're 473,000 short of that.
Right, but that still gives us 2.2 million for that exceptional education compliance, yes?
Two
For not
million one.
for implementation.
Saves us 2,000,001
2 million
for
one.
exceptional ed,
Got
yes.
it. Okay, so it does fund the
All but
lion's share.
473,000.
Okay.
So these bilingual initiatives, the K-3 class size.
Sure.
All these things.
Yeah, I mean, we're making tough decisions, but when we go, if we do a 2% raise, that adds another 900 and something.
944,000 to the 983 up there.
You mind adding that in there just
So
to
that's
see what that does for us?
$2 million, right? Roughly.
Adding the 2%, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
doing all of that and the 2% raise.
So let's change this
So we still run out of money at the
At-
exceptional
at
education
12.
improvement, but it still gives us 1.2 million for exceptional education improvement.
and no K-3 class size reduction.
Sure.
It gives us 2.6.
And if we.
Yeah,
I think, just to follow up on my question with Ms. Kane, if we were to eliminate extra PD days out of this budget and reconstitute the ones consistent with the principles and philosophy of the AIP, that would free up another $1.5 million. Is that right?
You still have to do the 1.5% pay raise for teachers.
Right, but we would get that if we did 2%, right? If we just gave a straight raise?
Well, no,
You could do
no
it
The
cost.
money is the same. The money is the same in the 3 PD days and the 1.5% raise for teachers essentially, right?
1.5 and the 3 PD days are equivalent for teachers.
Right, so what if we forget the PD days? If we just said we are going to give our teachers, our employees a 2% raise, does that qualify for the state match?
Yes.
It does, but what he's trying to say to you is if you get it the way you're doing it now, you can get both of them, but dollar value is still the same. If you take it all out in a straight 2%, the dollar value is still the same. All they did was add a 0.5 onto that model. Right.
It's the same.
So-
dollars as you're
Right now, the teachers, 1.5% is the 3 PD days.
What I call the state superintendent, they gave.
It's tied, right, I was
Okay.
hoping somebody was gonna say that.
Okay.
It's tied to it.
Yeah, so the dollar amount's still the same, you just would be giving them, really what you're saying is you got there's a difference between a raise and a pay increase, just to clear the language up. One is a pay increase, which is 3 days.
But we're paying
Right,
for the
because
days.
it's just an increase, because you don't want to say raise, because they're working, but it's a pay increase. What they did is, you could take that and not do the days, and give a straight 2% pay raise, or the way they have it showing there now, they added a 0.5, so really what you have is a 1.5% pay increase and a 0.5 pay raise. It gives the same dollar value, and you still get your 3.
I guess I thought, what I was going there for was we do the extra PD days, which costs some amount of money. Right. And in addition to that, a 2% raise that the counties did. Is that what this?
It is.
That's what this is, yes?
Because the 3 days is the 1.5 million, is the 1.5% for teachers.
Okay, so I don't think it's not a raise that we're asking them to work more days than they're paying them.
Right.
So-
Pay increase.
Was it paid?
Correct, so that's what I'm asking is how,
It's a work increase.
right, how do we,
He wants you to separate out and show a 2% true pay raise, and still keep what the dollar value be just for the PD.
Keep the 3 PD days?
Yes.
Oh, then it's another $1.5 million.
That's what
Right,
he
that's
needs
what
to
it
know.
says.
can you add that in there?
That's what it says.
No, that's
No.
using the PD
That's
days.
on top.
He's saying give them 2% plus the PD days.
Right.
Correct.
So we'd have to.
Correct.
You have to add another $1 million.
Just think of it being simplified, you'd be like a 3.5% payment.
So you can add another $1.5 million in here.
Gotta be competitive.
Right, but I'm just saying, just explaining what.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's
Did I
what
capture
I'm,
it?
that's what I'm, that's
Competitive,
exactly
but
what
not
I'm.
growing.
He was, the board was not at the last work session where we discussed this.
You're saying when I add another $1.5 million.
Whatever it takes to do a true 2% raise and the 3 PD days.
That's the number right there.
And at some point, I'm gonna ask my question. I'm feeling on the end, it's almost
You'll get
there.
your question to
I just want you all to believe that I can ask the question. Just have the faith. I'm almost there. Just staying with me. What else, Cody?
Okay. All right.
Well, I just want to say, I can live with this if perhaps we take back 2 professional development days. I think that may get us farther down the list.
Okay, I'm
think so,
I'm
because-
slow on this one, and it's important. This is what Mr. Stern was talking about, right?
Yes.
2% raise plus the additional pay to cover for the additional days. Isn't that the same thing? Because it was 1.9 plus 1.5 is 3.4.
Yeah.
But those,
We're
item
already paying,
17,
this is
item
the cost for the 3
17,
additional days, right?
That's right.
item 17 was covering part of the
That's
1.5%.
They're working for the 1.5%.
In line 19, you only have 0.5% of the 2% in there. So that's why I had to add the $1.5 million to get the other part of that 2%, because that $1.5 million here is only the three days. He wants the 3 days
I get that.
plus the cost of 2%.
What's a
That's-
2% raise cost?
That's
Okay,
3.1 million is what we originally had down.
3.1?
3.4 million, because we had
Okay.
we
So
had
then
3.1
this is
million
what's
originally.
confusing me, and use PD days in this
Yeah,
description.
we need to take that.
Now you would take that, yeah.
All right, okay.
That's why you went to law school.
That's great to get Dr. Board for you to shut stuff down.
I need
So a professional development day,
Now I'm okay.
I saw what you were saying, not to even,
That's right.
to end. Yeah, at first I didn't, but I saw it.
Okay.
so a professional development day is $500,000.
Pardon?
A professional development day is $500,000.
A as a 1, is that what you mean? 1, yeah, then you add 3, yeah.
506.
Yeah, 506 per day.
All right. This is Muhammad.
I forgot my
Gray,
question.
or should we got-
No, I did not.
No, don't.
I
Are
didn't
you
for-
ready for real?
I am.
Muhammad
Ms.
Gray and Miss Taylor.
Ms. Kane, do we have a plan in place for those teachers? I know, I have been discussing teachers not attending PD for
Yes.
whatever reason.
Yes.
Do we have a plan in place for the building administration to keep track of that? And
Yes, we can.
okay,
Yep. Building and district,
Is that
Okay.
a document?
yes,
okay, because it's a part of their.
absolutely.
Okay, I just, and some reoccurrences
Mhm.
you can pick out.
REA said they were gonna work with us on that. REA.
Oh, most definitely, CTE already has it in place, it's a simple fix.
Good, that's
She
right.
met with us about Plan A use, we might wanna do.
Right. Okay, sure. And the technology, is that going for the teachers too, Mr. Gardner?
Yes, ma'am.
So every teacher that will be employed in RPS, if they have a desktop or PAL in their room, it will be upgraded to the program. It would not have Word 97. Okay.
Hey,
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad.
Miss Gray.
I did a lot that year. Thank you for mercy and grace.
My question is about technology support division initiatives in the professional services line. That's a really significant increase, 1.1 million, and it says phone 300,000. And I see there are other positions that have been added, but it says see attachment for professional services. Am I missing an attachment?
No, it should have been this sheet here.
They're on the street.
And the email should have been a 2-page.
Attachment that explains why we're paying an additional
Is that what you
1
brought
point.
up on the screen?
That's what this is, explains the 1,133. It's for these technician level 2, technician level 1 of those, 6 of these, technician level 1 here, 1 of these, and the ones in yellow are strictly contract positions. We don't have any in-house.
But
That's how we.
aren't we already budgeted for several of those? Why are we
For
increasing?
some, but not any of these. These are not in the current budget.
So we're that much at a deficit for
Yes,
technology?
yes.
$1.1 million in people, and that's outside of our regular
Staff,
full-time staff.
correct.
How much are we paying right now for professional services?
I mean, we're paying most of these now, right?
Right.
All of
What's-
this.
What was the line, what was the baseline last year? What was it approved now for this line item last year? Roughly, rough numbers,
380,000.
So we are increasing by the 1 point, whatever.
We're more than tripling. Or
Yes, because it's money we're actually spending. Again, these are just deficient budgets
So where did we get it this time?
through turnover, and that's predominantly vacancies.
How aggressive is, subsequent question, Mr. Gardner, how aggressive is this plan, you know, upgrading all these initiatives and stuff? Is it something that we're gonna look 6 months from now, next year, and say, we got 70% of it done, or 60, or 80, or 90?
As far as our goals,
Yeah,
well, this is just to keep us at the same level we're at now, with the increase of the AIP plan, the increase of the technology, and all the new applications that's going out for support.
But right now,
and Ms. Kane, the AIP pieces of this technology budget line item, they're not, that's been taken out of the other AIP?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So it'll never show up twice, like in that AIP and someplace else.
And Ralph, I assume that the cost benefit has been done, just hiring us rather than paying for these contractors.
Again, I think a lot of these are hard to staff, it's hard to retain technical positions. Mr. Hartman probably is
And do we have a IT staffing company on contract?
He was asking if a cost benefit analysis had been done to put these at full-time versus contracting them. Are they difficult to staff predominantly or?
Some of them are, some depend on the position, usually higher level position, we don't pay enough to attract certified people.
so have we compared our costs to comparable districts? Because, you know, it's hard for me to swallow
This is right here is low.
an increase of this amount.
Right.
How are we doing it until now without all those people? And I understand there are issues because I still can't get into Aspen to get a report on how my child is doing, but how are we surviving now without the 1.1 million in additional staff?
We are scraping by, utilizing vacancies.
So how can we scrape by a little bit more and squeeze a little bit more out?
Because
of what we have?
we're contracting the staff out, we're paying for it through turnover and lapse. That's what they've been
Right,
living on
so,
borrowed money.
but what you're asking for here is fill all those positions you've been staffing this with and add on the professional services on top of that. Or are you talking about, I mean, if you're saying
We're
you're
talking
funding
about
it, if you're saying you're funding it through vacancies, but we haven't eliminated those
Division-wide
vacancies.
vacancies, not ICTUS vacancies. Throughout the whole division, the money that we have is turnover here, that's where we're getting it, not strictly out of ICTUS. our goal for 17 would be to convert these to positions and not fund contract positions.
So we're transferring money from, because I haven't seen those, where are we transferring the money from? I haven't seen those in our,
They're not
budget
position transfers, they're through year-end balancing when we get to the end of the year. That's how it's done. It's not done with position transfer form. It's done by balancing, you give the superintendent authorization to balance the budget and bring it in under budget by at the end of the year, then it's just.
if we're contracting out of a budget line for professional services and we've maxed out, there's no more money in that budget line, how are we paying, how are we still contracting for those services?
Yeah, we're not a transfer to it. And we have made a transfer from, we did submit a transfer, a sizable one.
Technology and
For technology this year, and for exceptional ed, both.
Those are the two largest ones. We recently did one also for garage contracted services. And we'll probably have to do another for garage contracted services.
But those were within that budget code, or?
Not necessarily. We cross budget categories at times, particularly with the large exceptional ed. What are the components of that?
And Ms. Gray, keep in mind, like for example, the technician level 1 in all other school districts, they have one person that's designated in every school building, that they are designated to that building, so that when a teacher or an administrator in that building have a problem, they're there. They don't have to call anybody, they don't have to dispatch anybody out. The problem is fixed right then and there, as well as for the service desk. They have service desks within each building. So we are well below what they're doing in the other districts. We're just trying to, this doesn't cover having a technology person in every building.
It's kind of alarming to see that much of an increase from one year or another. And I would like to see what comparable districts pay for technology.
All right.
Would that impact services if we do that? I'm sorry. Ms. Gray makes an excellent point. I just want to also, okay.
We eliminate that. That means when teachers call, administrators call, that means longer help.
I'm not suggesting eliminate, I just want to know what the justification is.
Do we have some IT people in current building?
No, ma'am.
So we took them out?
Never have.
So when I go over to a school and this lady says she's the IRT IT person, who is she?
ITRT.
What is that?
That's an instructional person.
Instructional technology.
But she's messing with the computers. When people, when they're having issues, that's who they call to help them with their software.
If they're in that building on that day.
And that's part of the problem, is that that person is supposed to be offering instructional support, instructional technology, but they're being pulled to do things that are strictly technology, technical assistance. And so we're pulling the wrong folks.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Taylor.
We have additional detail on exceptional ed if you want. So got a breakdown.
Okay, I have a quick follow-up to Ms. Gray's question and the money that's tallied up through the fund balance is
Speak up, Ms. Taylor, please.
the money that's tallied up through the fund balance is, how does that equate to a big increase in that line item? What we actually spend at the end of the year, and we say this is how much we need to transfer over to facilitate the technicians and the subcontractors. How does that compare to what we were asking for in this plan? Is it about the same amount?
Well, last year we ended up with about 1.4 million in balance, and this year we're projecting zero balance. From planning money carried over.
My own question is in regard to the 2% increase. I guess I want to be competitive. I want to be able to pull those individuals into our district. But it seems to me that the biggest concern that I've heard is that it's our salary scale, and that the fact that they stay within that salary for such a long period of time, I think that the board needs to move towards making adjustments in that arena versus trying to accommodate through an additional 5%. And the reason why I also feel concerned about the additional 5% is because we have an academic improvement plan that we want to kick off. We don't know what the exact numbers are going to equate to. There may be a need for putting more additional funds into that particular category. So for me, it's more about making the priority the students at this point in time, and I think the academic improvement plan has a better chance of doing that, especially when we have professional development days that are meant to accommodate. Looking through being part of the HR committee, I've noticed that there are a lot of teachers coming in. A great deal of our teaching population has 0 years of experience, meaning that with the turnover rates, retirement, and that sort, our teachers are new, brand spanking new, and I think that they would be far more benefited by the professional development. If anything, then I think that we should find a way to increase those professional development days in lieu of just giving them a bump off the top. And I think it's, if we have something to show, like some of our schools coming out of priority, that would be a great justification for making such a change and move towards the total bump in pay without having to show us anything as to what you're doing for our student population.
Thank you.
I want to go back to the baseline conversation. So, for instance, the programs that are in the schools, the ones that we're funding, have we determined that they are of such value that we leave them in the schools where they are, as opposed to determining whether or not they're functioning and be able to save some money? I would use as an example, not that I want it taken out, but for instance, Virginia Heroes. Will we be funding Virginia Heroes again this year? And at the same cost that we funded it last year?
Right, and so we're working through some of that now. So that's one of those items that we started working on before we got any kind of financing to do that. So that's part of a program inventory of several pages of programs. And so we're working on that. We've not completed that because our staffing is short in that office, number one. But we're working on it. We don't have an answer for all of those things just yet.
So it potentially could be that there's some savings in there. We don't know that. How soon could we know that?
So we've got to go through next year. That's part of AIP. And so we've collected items. We're in the process right now collecting all of the programs and determining who the audience is intended for and what data we have available for it. The other part of that technology piece is, I believe, the longitudinal data system, which would allow us to pull data on these programs and certainly store it in a central location so that we can make some efficient comparisons. So all of this is tied together. So it's part of academic improvement plan, but we pulled out the technology piece. So, you know, some of it we can say we don't want to do again, but that particular program that you said, we don't have enough information on that yet.
We don't have enough. I'm sorry. She said we don't have enough information on it. But it does stay in the budget.
Unless somebody says otherwise, yeah. I mean,
Stays in the budget. We don't have enough money for it, and we're not doing it.
And isn't that
So
a
take it out of the
minimum
budget.
cost?
It's not a huge cost. I just was using that as an example of, you know, having to take a look at our programs and find out whether or not they're giving us any value for whatever it is we're paying them. Have we considered whether or not, for instance, have we looked at our memberships again? So are we members CRSS? Don't we pay them thousands of dollars? Great City, CGSC, Council of Great Cities? Is that impactful? How much do you pay for that membership?
30-something month?
Yes.
$30-some a month?
30,000.
It's 30,000 a year.
The metrics for the departments, the research that we get.
had an on-site review or pay
Review and
expenses
produce rate,
on
audits to be done through them that cost less than other agencies because of our membership.
And I guess that's where I just get a little bit confused. We're gonna have to wait to take a look at these programs. But there's some things that we are already paying for that are being done. I just don't understand why we don't have all this information.
Because you don't eliminate a program without going through the process. And that's what the point she's making. You have to go through a process evaluation. And also, if you cut a program without, if we just went out and said, Dr. Bailey doesn't think this is useful, and then they say, why? You're going to get bombarded, I guarantee you, with why did I decide this one? For like dances in the classroom, which if you look at the curriculum says is also about bullying and how kids teach each other and the behaviors and stuff. There's qualitative stuff that you have to go through and try to figure out how is that really panning out. I mean, if you remember when we did the conversation too, we spent $350,000 on foreign language, elementary. But one of the arguments is that look how few kids it served.
So we took that out?
No, the board opted to keep it in. So, I mean, and you know, so the question becomes going through these programs with a process to do a program evaluation rather than no one can say that it's because I felt a certain way about them, so that when, you know, because you all are going to get the call and you're going to question us and we want to be able to say this is why. That we're saying that this is not getting the return. Just like in the partnership office, we have started making sure that there are MOUs and clearly defined expectations for deliverables as we've been going through those slowly. Because remember, the partner programs, you have a department of one, for instance, in that department. So it's a slow, methodical process that you go through.
And so again, I would come back to, we've got a department of one that should be perhaps looking at this information. And we're sitting here talking about the budget, and we're not talking about the value of that department and whether or not we need to have some money over there so that it won't take as long for us to kind of figure out what's working, what's not working, because some of these programs have been around for quite some time. For instance, any discussion about the alternative program, is it working? We put we ended a contract with one entity. Now we're 2 years in with our alternative program, which definitely is going to speak to these children's academics, and there's nothing in this budget that I guess it's part of that baseline that you were talking about. So yeah, it would be helpful for me if I could see what builds up the baseline.
You mean programmatically?
Yes.
So the last.
Emails on that, right? Like a big, long sheet that had 5,328,000 lines.
Yes.
Just so
Perhaps
no. I'm just so familiar when I go back and try to look.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe you can just resend that if it's already there.
Okay.
Dr. Jones, followed by Ms. Gray.
My question, and I'm trying to, just looking at the screen, trying to funnel money back to our priorities, AIP, Benford, things of that nature. And I'm sitting here and I was looking at our contract list of we got 14 pages of contracts here, and I don't have any numbers with these contracts. So my question is, I mean, do we need this many contracts? Are we getting the best value for these contracts? Our first year we were able to really scrub down on some big ticket items, just looking at our top contracts. And I see, Harold Chambliss and some other things, but I got a lot of berries on here. And I don't know if there's savings to be achieved that would allow us to really find some significant money that we can funnel back into our priorities. So it's really difficult to make a good judgment on this because they got 14 pages of contracts but no numbers next to them.
And that's because a lot of these contracts are predicated on an ordered quantity. So purchasing procures the contract to procure the service legally using the request for proposal process. but then the amount that we spend on it depends on how much they engage the services of various contractors, which can vary from year to year. Like it's maintenance and operations or transportation. So a lot of these are just vendors we use for all of these. Like you said, it's 14 pages worth of vendors. And so it's more like we approve a budget with programs, and then the departments and the schools end up requesting purchasing to go procure the contract to fit the program. It's not the other way around. We don't have contracts and then find programs to fit them. It's like the other way around. So it's difficult to try to manage it from looking at it from a contract perspective.
I mean, are there big ticket contracts that we're tied into?
No, well, yeah, I mean, like the copier, Xerox, we spend $1 million a year with them.
We spend 1.6, we
Yeah.
budget 1.
We budget $1 million, we spend $1.6 million. That's right.
And that's the same with the foreign language. We budget 352, but we spend 752.
And so, yes, that's a large contract, but it's a 5-year contract that we're locked into 4 years ago. It's up in a year for renegotiation, but that's a service we're not going to do without. The schools would be screaming to the heavens if we didn't have copier services provided to them.
I guess for it would just be beneficial to, at least be able to look at, what we have spent on these things, at least, in the past fiscal year. And I always kind of look at those things to see, what you spent.
We can do that, and we provide a vendor list that shows what's been spent year to date by vendor, yes.
And then on the exceptional education budget, that piece of it, it's $50,000 in here for printing. But I thought we were trying to do more automated type of stuff.
So I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, please.
So the sheet that you just passed around, I provided to you in response to Mr. Bourne's question. I do apologize in advance for being handwritten, but I wanted to have a timely turnaround. So what I did was on the exceptional ed details, I marked each item for the C that is for things that are compliance related. So if you look on your sheet, you'll see a C for professional services for therapy. Again, those are items that are listed in the IEP. Tuition, that's for our students that have private day or adult one-on-one adult support. Student transportation, that's for special transportation, again noted in the IEP. Instructional materials, those are for those individualized, specialized resources the students need programmatic-wise that are listed in their IEP. So whether it's multi-sensory reading instruction, whether it's something for augmentative communication, those types of things. When you skip down to the replacement computer equipment, you'll notice that I have minus $60K in parentheses. So part of those, part of that 185 is $60,000 for laptops for social workers and psychologists. I put this $60,000 in parentheses because technically it's not compliance, but those are the devices that our psychologists and social workers use to complete their social histories or psychological assessments, which are needed for evaluations or reevaluations. And if those things are not completed timely, it then becomes a compliance issue. The other items that are listed in that 185 are things, items that AT devices that may be included in the student's IEP, so whether it's a handheld device or something that they'll use for the functional communication system. And I spoke previously before I went downstairs about the instructional materials that are listed further down. We have, again, protocols for social workers and psychologists. When they renorm or revise assessments, we have to update those things. So we had a budget transfer earlier this year that took care of some of those things, but the social worker and psychologist did a projection, and so based on how certain tests are normed, if they're renormed typically every 5 years, we're trying to account for that so that we're not caught in a bag. So all of the things that have C's next to them are compliance issues. The things that have a star next to it are things that we don't have to do. So Dr. Jones, that speaks to that printing piece. Okay. But however, we have to make sure that students, we have a way for families acknowledging that they understand the code of conduct, because if they don't, when they come before the disciplinary committee, it may become an issue where parents saying, I didn't. So those are some of those things that on face value, it may not be a compliance. It's kind of you pay now or you pay later kind of thing. And I think, in the staff development at the bottom, again, we're trying to make sure that our staff have the capacity, so we want them to engage in professional development in order for them to have the skills and resources to turnkey that PD for teachers in the building. But again, that's not going to be something that we're going to get hit by a lawsuit if they don't have it, unless, again, they don't have the requisite knowledge to provide that support.
Okay. Mr. Sturman, followed by Ms. Gray, Mrs. Tiller.
So does this mean that we are not in compliance with these things now, or like the IT budget, we're going and finding that money elsewhere to pay for these things?
We're finding it elsewhere, so the, for example, particularly for the therapy, the tuition, those things, you'll notice that Ms. Drury put forth a huge budget transfer a week ago and a couple of weeks ago, and then sometime before that, kind of pulling from everywhere. And this, because those are just things when we try to estimate it, and that's where on your sheet that was on one of the documents provided by Mr. West and Ms. Drury, they gave you the 3-year trend to see what we're actually spending.
But I mean, to Ms. Gray's earlier point, the concern I have with this and with the IT increases is it does not appear to be revenue neutral, spending neutral. In other words, we have these things that we pay for now, but this is asking for additional money to pay for things that we have money to pay for now. Should we not, if this number is going up, should we not see numbers elsewhere going down where we're getting that money to pay for it? This looks like we're doubling the spending.
Well, no, it's only because of turnover. If we ever had a year where we didn't have salary turnover and lapse, vacancy lapse, we'd be in the red on the budget. It's living dangerous.
But we budget right now for 100% of our FTEs.
Yes. After adjusting at the beginning of the budget cycle for current staff, it takes away all the turnover factor up to that point at the beginning of the budget process. So we're not leaving in the lapse that has accumulated in the prior year. We're eliminating, that's part of that $3.3 million baseline adjustment at the very beginning.
Are you done?
Yeah, that's great.
Just looking at this, I'm having a hard time understanding how, for instance, student transportation for special ed, I thought that fell under transportation's budget.
So we have some contractor services, some of our students, and we talked about this just briefly during the board meeting. Some of our students have need significant supports for their pro-social behavior. So it's a safety hazard for them to be on a bus with other students. So we contract, for example, with Ibrahim, and you see that probably in the contract list, and their cost of transportation is significant.
And that's not run through transportation at all. And so
now I do want to say that many of our students with disabilities are transported through RPS transportation. That's the primary source if you can utilize that method.
So this, and then computer equipment replacement, that's roughly $600,000 in computers. That's in addition to what IT is asking for an increase.
And that's correct. That's what Mr. Bourne, we kind of had in this ad. Some of the computer equipment, when you look under the replacement computer where it says laptops for schools, that 312, those are actually for students for that reading program that I talked about briefly. And then under materials, I left my eyes on. The row above it is for social workers, some of it for social workers, psychologists, or for AT equipment for students in our IEPs. So if they need an iPad or if they need some type of device for, if they're nonverbal, that kind of thing.
And for, back to the printing and binding, I know Chesterfield has like half the size of their code of conduct, and it's on very lightweight paper. What I've seen, and I don't know if we're still doing this, is we do the color, bound, heavy, every page is a full-size sheet. And when I had 5 students in Richmond Public Schools, I got 5 of these in the mail separately. So I'm just wondering, have we looked at the thin, and this sounds nitpicky, but the thin paper that puts it at half the size? Have we combined the mailing list so it's one per family if we're mailing them, if we're required to? I don't know if we are, but those kinds of things do make a huge difference. And I'm sure Chesterfield figured that out because they have a ton of people in the office. But, you know, I think now that I have two, I get two in the mail.
No, we can
Separate postage.
Alrighty, I want to help us here for a second, just catch our breath. It's 7:37, and the initial momentum around this meeting was that we were going to come and adopt, put forward our budget. Mr. Westbay, again, can you help us, remind us of timeline where we are?
We need to get teacher contracts out so we know what the final adoption is going to be by certainly no later than next Monday. It'd be hard pressed to get the contracts to teachers before they leave for the year. And the sooner we get them to them, of course, the better, while they're making decisions and contemplating other offers while we're in the boat. So the sooner the better.
Okay, so again, we're at a point tonight, I'm hoping we can start to move towards, we've heard people's input. We got to try to, unless, do we want to say we're coming back for another meeting? Oh.
You don't understand.
All righty then. Okay. So, I've given you your time check, and we need to start to move towards wrapping it up. All right.
We have a Boy Scout here, so, sir, can you go get us some blankets?
All right. Okay. This round we got, and also colleagues be very aware of, we're trying to make a work session. People are talking. Okay. So this time around is Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sturtevant again, and Ms. Taylor again.
I would yield to Mr. Sturtevant.
Okay.
Just to the point that you raised, Mr. Coleman, about putting the budget to bed, that's why I asked for this to be put up here so that we can all see it. I mean, it was important to me that we do Binford, that we do as much of the academic improvement plan as we possibly can. This proposed budget includes all of those line items, unless I'm incorrect. And I think the fact that Chesterfield and Henrico did a 2% raise, I think it's important that we do a 2% raise to remain competitive. To Ms. Taylor's point about the salary schedules being out of whack, I understand that. But at the same time, a 2% raise is a 2% raise and it's better than nothing or something lower. So I think this, maybe with some tweaking, it prioritizes the things that we have said are important with the limited funds that we have to work with. It'd be nice if we could do everything, but we can't.
Okay.
So, because I think the counties have already sent out contracts to their teachers. The counties have already finalized their budgets, and so we're sort of at the 11th hour, which is more often than not.
Maggie Walker, students get told they don't get to go to Maggie Walker.
Well, so I saw Mr. Westbay, I guess it looks like if we don't do the K-3 class reduction, that takes money, $845,000. So and I think Mr. Moore may have a comment on how we deal with that.
And I've included that in here, so your bottom line right here, right now, assumes that the K-3 class size revenue is gone.
So that has changed in the last couple of minutes because of that K-3 revenue reduction.
So the stuff in green now is what's not funded. We can get through the maintain current service levels with $113,000. We can make that work.
And the maintain current service levels is one of those areas where we have the money in the budget now to pay for it, but this is to do
paying for it through only be if we have enough labs to cover.
I do want to remind you that built into item number 13 reasonably were able to get the Office of Civil Rights to, for lack of a better term, stand down, there's some voluntary concessions we made. And for instance, we're living off of borrowed money with your translation services at board meetings, all our activities and events, the printing costs, translation. So built into that is some of that. You're going to lose your welcome center that was highly publicized, which just, you may choose to do that. So I think you have to have a conversation. If you're not going to fund the whole thing, that's when we probably need to break out and look at it and say, what are we going to really get deemed on? Because the welcome center is our choice, just to be transparent. The translation services was like, we had to do that to be in compliance. That was part of the complaint file. The interpretive services was one of the things we had to do to get that. And then we had staffing in there to address your growing ESL population that's overrunning Green Elementary School right now with not enough teachers. So if you're going to keep that down there, I would ask I wanted somebody to pull that out so you can see how much of that is absolutely in compliance versus what she did with special ed that could be a compliance issue if it happens.
I have an idea on that, but I
think Ms. Taylor is after you.
I'm very concerned about that 2% staying in place. I don't see how that would prioritize itself over some of the things that are still in green that Dr. Bennett just referenced. Also, and looking at some of the handouts that have been distributed this evening, I'm sure that has an impact on the positions that they have, the teaching positions that they have. It will go from the 1.5, which it was initially projected to be, to the 2.0, which will raise the cost of everyone who wants to include additional staffing into their proposals, and whether it's IT, the classroom, or we have other categories that fall under the teacher pay increase. Also, we have Thompson and Elkhart merging. A lot of federal funds are going to be lost because they will be coming out of that status that they're currently in. So we're going to need to allocate funds towards that and make sure that that's a priority as well. Again, we have the academic improvement plan, so I would like to see what the consensus is as far as providing the needs of our students or keeping that additional 2% in versus taking it back down to 1.5. In addition to getting a consensus on that before we move on, I would also like to know what the exceptional education initiative details as it relates to the things that have asterisks beside versus the being in compliance to the Cs, and what those total costs would be, because to me clearly some money has to be cut from that $2.6 million as Mr. Warren referenced earlier. It's just a matter of, if we're deciding on the budget tonight, how much of that $2.6 million can be curtailed. I know things that you mentioned, Dr. Boyd, specifically with the transportation. Many of our students already receive their transportation from RPS. So how much could all of these categories be shaved so that we can know exactly how to move forward with kind of cutting back in that area? But as we move forward, can we get a consensus as to how we feel about maintaining that 2.0% versus what was initially recommended by the administration?
Sure.
It's my opinion to take it back to where it was.
All right, and I believe we're going to get there. I want to make another suggestion. Mr. Bourne.
So, not going to rehash everything I've already said, but I do believe that priorities as listed better reflect, I think, what we've been working on for the past 18 months. And so it would be my preference to keep 2% in. But because we have all these other competing priorities, exceptional ed compliance or improvements, bilingual initiatives, K-3 class sizes, I would just make one change of what's up there and then one other change. So I would say we completely do away with the additional PD days for this year. and ask, how we embed what we were going to do in those professional development days into the days that are currently on the calendar. Thereby, I think that's 1.5 million that will bring that green line down a little bit. In addition, I know that we have talked a lot about this, and I know it gets a lot of use, and it has its merits, and I think a lot of the things up here have merit, but these are tough choices that we have to make. So I would also add in there that we dramatically reduce our constituent services funds. I mean, $20,000 a piece at a time, or whatever it is, 15, 16, whatever it is. If you reduce that, eliminate it, reduce it to $1,000 a piece or whatever, that brings that line down even more, where we can get some more bilingual stuff paid for, or the K-3 class size reduction. In addition, I think we also got a white paper several weeks ago regarding our audit department and how we reconstitute that. That's about $500,000 all in. Obviously, we still need to have some ability to pay for audit services because we're required to audit our books. But whatever that is, I think that's a priority. That's obviously a compliance issue, but the other recommendations in there were judgment calls that we have to make. And so I would rather spend the remaining, whatever that is, 300, 200,000, put that back into the pot, because I think, in the green, there are things that I think we would be remiss if we didn't try with everything we had to fund. So those would be my recommendations.
Would I say that you would like to that all three of the professional days we got to
Yes.
And that you can keep it 2%?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Larson?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want to finish?
I can have a conversation with Ralph before I make the suggestion, if it makes sense. If that's okay.
Hold on, Mr. Bourne. You can do it.
Oh, okay.
Reduce the constituent services money by what? By how much?
What do we get per board member?
Right now, we get 15.
15,933.
So
15,933.
How much you say this?
15,933. Numbers are my specialty.
So
So you want to
16,000.
reduce it?
16 times 9 equals 144,000. I mean, I think if we kept.
Well, you need to number 8, for example, Mr. Board. You actually, then you say, Ralph, that costs us money if we don't do that? Number 8, for example.
Number 8,
Where?
warehouse closed.
Warehouse
If we don't
closing.
close it, it's costing us 500,000?
Right, we need to add 500,000.
So that would cover that, because that costs us money if we don't do something like that.
Can we see what it looks like with Jeff's recommendation of taking out 17?
Taking out 17.
I just want to go on the record and say I strongly oppose our teachers, again, who have 0 years of experience for the most part.
Not have any
professional.
right,
There's so
right,
many
that's
things it
crucial
entails.
right there.
It's about classroom management, it's about how to create lesson plans, it's about things that impact our students directly. And it's something that is greatly needed, having been in the classroom. I know how, when I first went in, not having that hands-on, it makes a big difference, especially if you're young and you don't have the experience of even raising children to know how to manage your classroom.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, thank you. Did you talk to Mrs. West about that? What did you say?
Well, I mean, with the three things that we've been sort of, these are my words, robbing Peter to take all the technology, maintain current service levels, and the exceptional ed. I know that's a risky proposition, but I think historically we do have turnover, we do have these vacancy savings. So my simple deduction is that it's a less risky proposition if we were to roll the dice on less money. So fund maybe, for the exceptional ed, maybe we fund 1.3 of it, or 1.5, or 1.7. And with the maintain current service levels, maybe we maybe we pay for $1 million or 900,000, and with the technology sort of do the same thing. I think we're minimizing the risk where something could go wrong, but we're also starting to fix that structural deficiency. Is that a completely
No? As opposed to rolling the dice 100%?
No, I mean, I didn't, like, I want to be fiscally responsible, but also, I mean, obviously you know better than I do, there are all these competing priorities, and so that was my question for him.
Okay.
And what's your answer?
That's an
Better
improvement
than-
over
better
leaving
than
them
nothing.
unfunded completely, yes.
Okay, all right.
Thanks for something. Okay. Can I go?
No, I'll be honest with you, it makes me nervous to say that I've got to eat 2.6 million and 1.9 million on the hope that 1.3 million and the technology on the hope that we're going to make enough turnover next year to cover all of that. But if you throw a couple million in there, then maybe so. I also think it's a perfect year to take care of the 1.5% of teachers with PD days and the 0.5% added to give them a 2% equivalent, because the state's allowing you to use that and collect $1 million. You just saved $1.5 million to put toward those other initiatives. If we weren't in this position, I wouldn't make that recommendation, but I'm saying it's catastrophic at this point. And really, I mean, the level that we're at, and that's $1.5 million we could put below the line and still meet the mandate and give the equivalent of 2% increase. Yes, 3 additional work days. The 3 work days, weren't they also critical components of the AIP itself?
Right.
If we're going to do the AIP,
Exactly.
they were predicated, it was predicated heavily on PE days.
So, that's the perfect segue into where I am. I am not with you guys on the 2% raise. I agree with the keeping in the PD days. We started at 9, we went down to 5 in our proposal, right?
Exactly.
To city council, and now we're at 3. I just am not comfortable eliminating them. I think we need them. When we spent all that time putting together the budget and looking at what the other jurisdictions are doing, I mean, I think that is a key component of the AIP. We're gonna spend all this money on all of this, software, new programming, all of these things for our staff and our teachers to do, but then we're not gonna have any time to educate them. So I would rather that we go back to where it was with just giving the teachers the 3 days, and then doing the supplemental for the staff that we have to do to get the state equivalent. That's where I am, For the secondary leveling, that's still TBA.
As you said earlier,
It's unlikely we're going to have any.
We just don't think that we're going to at this point, because this is something we haven't done in years. We don't want to be too aggressive.
Right.
Put us in a bad situation.
Right.
We feel now after meeting today, we're going to take what we get.
Okay.
Any positions we're going to hold so that we don't have to plan for like we did last year. Like, we have no money in here for extra teachers.
Okay.
So get more students in, for example, like we did this past year. We're banking on those savings to cover that this year, and then making a calendar to start that more aggressively this year, to still try to say, how do we tighten reins on the class size and the programs and offerings that are happening in our school.
Right, so we're not putting long-term subs in there.
Well, that's our, we're not.
We may have to.
We don't get teachers come
Right.
in. But last year when we had 10 spots or something like that, you notice that didn't happen.
Right.
We're trying to manage that before we do.
Okay.
Now by tightening our belt, so we didn't have to ask you all for money for that.
Okay. The constituent services that are board member money, I'd be okay to bumping that down to $5K a person instead of the 16 where we are now. I guess that would save us what, 90,000?
Can we find a middle point for that?
I feel like that is a middle point, because Jeff was talking about 1,000. That's where I am.
So let's make sure our priorities are defined.
I think professional development is
So, and Jeff, can you say again what you said about the audit department?
Well, I mean, we got a white paper a month ago on how we would
Reallocate the money?
reallocate or reappropriate the money.
Okay.
There was a list of things and positions to hire and fill.
Outside of the audit department?
Well, I think in addition to what Ralph, I think, is suggesting about, we still have audits that we have to do. So we have to engage somebody to do, I think, our student accounts and all that stuff. We have to have those audited. So that would necessarily mean that we'd have to contract for that service, right? Or someone. So that's $90,000. I think the total budget is $500K. So that's an additional $400.
Minus position control.
So where is that? Is that factored into the baseline that we started with, or is that not factored in here at all?
It's in the base.
The status quo is factored.
The audit department, yeah, status quo is in there.
Okay, so we could choose to make some changes in that department that might shift this around a little bit. Okay, can we get a copy of that white paper?
I emailed it to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was in the Friday before.
I emailed it today.
Oh, you did? It was in the attachments you sent us?
Yes.
Okay. Got that. All right, that's all I have for now. Oh, you want to say something?
Can I go before you go, Mr. Chairman?
Could I go first? I haven't.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just like
I would just like for the administration, whether Mr. West Bay or Dr. Benton, the original place that you all came to and brought to us, that at this point I felt like a lot of investment was made and work around getting us to that point. I just want to hear, after you all heard what you've heard here tonight, I kind of heard Mr. Westby kind of hitting on some parts of what he heard. But, you know, I put a lot into this before tonight. What do y'all want to say to that effect?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking a little bit differently based on the conversation.
All right.
I was nervous about changing any of this before we started.
Okay.
I agree with you about what you're going to be held accountable for and what we've got to try to do. Can we, there's some merit to saying we'll kick the can down the road another year on our stuff that we're covering that's not really adequately budgeted. Yeah, we can probably do it another year. And hopefully we'd have some leniency for consideration maybe from the council too, to go back to them to say we did our best to try to balance this thing. And could we ask for a supplemental appropriation if push came to shove, if we got to that point next year. We're probably not going to have, the other, I mean, we need to get this K-3 class size probably up above the line because that's $848,000 of lost revenue to the state. The rest of it we can probably make work if we scale back and still use those 3 PD days to qualify for the 1.5% because that gains us $1.5 million more dollars to put to the items below the line. And then from there, it's, I'll go with no ESL teachers if we forego the bilingual piece on item 13.
So I'm sitting.
And we could reduce the bilingual by $505,000 if we said we were just going to do the 4 SOQ mandated, well, they're 11 for SOQ purposes, but 4 that we had to do to meet the money that we were getting, the increase in money next year from the state at a minimum. We needed to do the other 7. We could cut 505,000 out and defer those another year.
Does that eliminate the Welcome Center?
No, it doesn't eliminate the Welcome.
She's working on now to break it out to see each best we can, so you can see in that grouping. One is what gets us in trouble if we don't do it. And then 2, like the Welcome Center. And so she's working on that too, what she did for special ed. You know, I appreciate and understand Mr. Moore's point. I think it's a valid point. That, you know, at the end of the day, there is going to be a question about progress and what's being made. And so for that reason, you know, when I look at number 17, when I called the state and got clarification on the day issue and what it counted, it was because I felt like I still wanted to give our teachers somebody that still support AIP and honor the board's concept that if they're going to work more, then we need to make sure they get paid more. You know, we gave a higher raise last year than surrounding jurisdictions. We gave 2, I think they gave 1. So there is some, and I'm just saying that because at the end of the day, absolutely anytime we can give people 3.5%, I want to give it. But we just don't have it with everything else that's going on. So I factor in what we did last year compared to the surrounding jurisdiction and still giving them some money this year. I mean, I even like the kind of the hybrid with adding 0.5 onto it and still, you know, giving them a partial pay raise with the pay increase. But I do get, you know, the bilingual is the bilingual, we got to pull out. Special ed, compliance issues, and pay 3, we lose it. We got to find a way to get more of those closer. And then at the end of the day, for me, as I said at the last meeting, depending on how close you get, you know, that number has to be, for me as a superintendent, what is it, you know, how far do we kick the can down the road based on, you know, you get $260 million budget. You know, like I told you all last time, you got $500,000, $750,000, I really don't sweat. So to me, the more you shrink it to $1 million or less, then I tend to be more comfortable rolling the dice that something will happen for another year. Do I like planning that way? No, we were trying to close the gap, but we can't keep living on borrowed time. Because we're depending on things that have a trend that happen, but the one time it doesn't, the idea of going downstairs and saying we overspent our budget and asking is like cut me and pour salt in the wound. That's what kind of makes me nervous. So it's a matter of me of nicking away at some pieces of all of that to close that gap.
So I'm taking the 505,000 out of the bilingual.
How many teachers have you?
4.
Including
4.
Okay. All right, Ms. Muhammad.
I just wanted to give my 2 cents on where I am. I am too not with the 2% raise. I just feel like for me, you know, I know our teachers work hard. I know that, but there is so much more that they can do to actually earn that. We're in a crisis academically, and I'm not saying they're not working. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I'm trying to prioritize in terms of, do I want to give them more financially, and our district is not moving academically. And I have to weigh that as an educator and as a board member. And I'm leaning towards moving the district and these other initiatives forward and staying with the cushion of a 1.75 or whatever that was. I think we need to keep the 3 professional development days. It is critical that, and not just our first year teachers, we have seasoned teachers that are ineffective in the classroom. And the only way we can provide sources and resources to decrease the ineffectiveness, so we continue to provide professional development days. The district improvement plan includes board training. If we start ripping at that piece, or whatever Dr. Benton nicknamed it, then that is going to withdraw us from holding any accountability of receiving governance training in all categories in order to continue to move this district forward. So you all are going to have to, I encourage you to remember that. Constituent services, I would agree that we probably should reduce that amount, I think, to 7,000. And the reason why I chose an amount of 7,000 is because I thought about, for me, what I have provided all 9 districts in the city, not just the 6. That money that was allotted to me did not just serve the 6th district. It served it was open to every family and to every child in the city. And reducing it to 5 is, for me as a board member who is actively engaged in this entire school community, is going to be a disservice to the families that I serve all over the city. So I could see reducing it, but not to 5,000. Secondary staffing, we're going to have to get that done. We're going to have to man up and get it done, because we're not balanced, and that is causing a continuation of struggles in academics with our students. So that is a bullet we're going to have to fight. And if you all don't understand what that really means to level that, I encourage all of us to research that. Sit down with Ms. Kane, sit down with Dr. Benton, but preferably Ms. Kane and maybe the directors, Mr. Jeffers, and let them explain to you what that exactly means. Because it may not bite us in September through December, but it's going to come back and bite us when we come around to the accountability season. So if we don't act now with that leveling, it's going to hurt us. It hits our graduation composite index rate. It hits our exceptional children program. It hits so many programs where we do not have secondary leveling. And I live it every day. So it's going to have to be something that we have to do and be serious about it. So if nothing else, do that research. Sit down with the people that we hired to do the work so they can talk with you about what that impacts. And then on that end, they can't be shy telling you about it, because we didn't hire them to be shy. We hired them to do the job.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Sturdy.
On the PD days, I agree with everybody who said that there is value in the PD days. My problem is, and this is because problems of the past before the folks who are here now got here, but I've yet to run into a teacher who says that they get the value out of the PD days that exist now. And so from a fiscally responsible standpoint, my view would be, before we start pumping more money into more PD days, why don't we fix the system that we have, make the PD days that are already built into the calendar worthwhile and worth the money that's spent on them, and then we can come back next year and say, okay, we fixed the status quo and made it better. Let's fund these additional PD days. So that's my problem with adding professional development days. With the not going to a 2% raise, I think is a real problem for us to be able to attract and retain the best and the brightest teachers. Because Henrico already has a salary scale that goes through the roof, and we are not at all competitive with it. And so every year that they are outpacing us and we're not keeping up is a year that more and more teachers are going to look to go to Henrico or somewhere else other than Richmond, where we can't afford to have that kind of brain drain. And then my follow-up question is, Ralph, what has changed here? This is taking it down to a 1.5.
Right, so this is putting it back to using the 3 PD days for the 1.5% academic, then leaving this for moving it back to 1.5% instead of 2%. That's what this would do. I reprioritize these things based on what you were discussing, putting exceptional ed and things, and putting the bilingual, the technology, and maintaining service levels down below. shows that we're within 592,000 of covering bilingual. We cover the K-3 class size reduction. I put the 848,000 back in state revenue. So that gets us down to 14. And before we were covering 15 total. So in other words, we're good for all but the last 3 items there.
I just last thing, I cannot support the items on the budget where we are adding additional money to pay for things that we already have the money to pay for now, even if we have to go somewhere else in the budget to find it.
What do you mean by that?
So the exceptional education compliance and improvement, we pay for most of that stuff now with money from elsewhere in the budget. I know you're looking this up there now.
Yeah, it's the only thing that's above the line.
Yeah, let's make
The IT stuff in 15 and the stuff in number 5, maintain current service level. That's stuff that already gets paid for now with money that we have already.
Hold on, sir. Dr. Bed, comment.
They want to move bilingual up.
I will vote for that, yes.
I guess
But not at the sake of
I
number 12.
understand that we're paying for it, we're paying for it out of other things, or we're paying for it leftover money.
We're paying for it out of salary and benefit savings from both turnover and vacancies.
So leftover money.
Leftover money.
Yeah, that's what we
Unspent
call it.
salary.
Yeah, unspent salary and benefits, which is not a cool area to borrow money from.
This gets us
To
through
fit.
all but
To cover.
592,000 technology of exceptional ed.
Number 12.
Okay.
It's not cool at all.
So my comment, Mr. Sterling, is we actually thought that hybrid was still keeping the gap from widening. When you do the hybrid, you're still increasing the pay, you're not falling behind. So it's still accomplishing your concern. We're still, while we're giving it 3 days, we're also still raising their salary.
That's for additional work. That's sort of a challenge.
Okay. Mr. Vaughn.
Don't think about it, please. You know that my hand has been up and down.
Oh, no, you did like that?
No.
Okay, Ms. Taylor.
That was not my fault.
Okay.
I only said that because this is the second time. I just want to say that you're forgiven now. I would really like to look at where we can shave off the cost for the exceptional education. Specifically as points that we made during the discussion with Dr. Boyd, things we were making copies, anticipation of books and things of that sort for multiple children within the same household, to see what that can look like, what we can get a percentage of what the cut would look like.
This is saying we'd be cutting 592,000 from this prioritized list.
It would be $592,000 short.
Yes.
Okay, but I'm saying
We'd be
to lower that
funding
$2.6 million to a lesser amount, a percentage off, because again, I think from the things that were listed in the report that we were given this evening, it does not require that large amount. Even if we were to cut that $592,000 from that, or bring it down to.
That's what we'd be doing.
Oh, you definitely.
That's what we'd be doing. We'd be cutting 592 from, if you funded it this way.
That's what it would be short, but what I'm saying is,
So that's what
where
we-
it is at $2.6 million.
We'd be cutting it to 2 million.
Okay, I got you, so that right column is an actual subtraction from the left. Okay. But that's still the same type of shortage, correct?
Yes.
Right,
It'd be
exactly.
2
I said if
million.
you
It would leave them with 2,048,000.
If you reduce that amount from 2.6 million to say 2 million, and then wouldn't that take it into the positive on that side?
Yes, that's what we're saying.
Okay.
In effect, we cut this to 2,048,322.
I guess that's what I'm trying to see what that looks like on the screen to actually see that reduction.
All right.
And even with that done, is there any way to prioritize the 15 over?
Well, what we're suggesting is that we're going to cover this out of next year's labs, basically. that and the maintaining service, current service levels.
Is that sort of what I suggested? Is that another way to say it?
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure, because I agree that it's hard for me to wrap my head around funding it. We've got all this trend data that says we've been able to pay for it, but I do also recognize that that is structurally unsound. And so I think that if we can, I guess I'm comfortable taking a bite out of it. So, like on those three things, the exceptional ed compliance review, the technology divisions initiatives, and to maintain current service levels, I think if we said we were going to fund half of that, that's a bite.
Out of which?
So whatever, what were these original numbers here? It's like 2.6.
2.6.
So instead of saying that we're going to budget for 2.6, let's budget for 1.3. Instead of saying we're going to budget for 1.9, let's budget for 1. Instead of saying we are going to budget for 1.8, let's say we're going to budget for 900,000. What does that do for us?
Dr. Boyd?
Just briefly, I certainly understand the concept that a number of you have seen around us making it or kind of getting by, and we will certainly do what we have to do, but I just want to just be extremely clear, Ms. Lilly is here, that as we are looking at our exceptional ed audit, I'm sure that there's going to be some additional things that we have to do. Special ed is not one of those things we could say, tell a parent, we can't provide, we can't afford, we don't do. Those are phrases that just can't happen in exceptional ed, so I think I would be remiss not to just reiterate that again, and I'm sure that everybody knows that, but just so that as we're making these decisions, and I know we'll have to make tough choices, just knowing that I just don't want us playing Russian roulette, if you will.
So that's saying if we said we're explicitly going to cover half of those, if that's saying we're explicitly going to fund half of them, then you're expecting us to come up with $1.2 million in savings next year to cover everything down through item 5 on that list on the right.
All right.
Okay. I had 3 real quick. The bilingual initiatives. We're going from 11 teachers to 4 teachers.
ESL.
Does
that still maintain
So it does, and we can make some additional, the way we planned the Welcome Center was to be staffed 20 hours per week during the months of July through September and 10 hours a week for the rest of the duration. And we also planned it to do some parent education pieces at the Welcome Center. If we had cut out the parent education piece, and I know I'm not looking at you, Ms. Evans, I know that's your thing. And if we just operate the Welcome Center from July to September, we could, and I'm doing rough estimates as we're talking here, save close to $90,000 from what we had, but it was significantly.
You mean 90?
Out of the Welcome Center piece.
You mean going lower than that? She's already, it was 1.1, they reduced it.
Yeah, we've taken out 7 added ESL teachers.
Right, the ESL teachers were previously, and that was from the instructional side.
So that all you reduced was the 7 ESL?
And all that talk we did about service in the ESL community, blah, 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 and then we're taking out 7.
That to me is a
My concern is not as much about the teacher positions unless it's just called a teacher position, but it's one of those paraprofessionals that sits in the front office. Do we have any money in there for like the individuals who are actually enrolling the children to assist with that communication?
Was meant to relieve some of that and centralize that process, so they to pull back some of that school-based requirement. So that's why when she was saying we're gonna do 9, I'm like, because that's still putting a burden on the school to serve the parent. Welcome Center was meant to give them one-stop shopping to try to do most of that. Now, we told them we weren't school, no, because I'm going to tell them to send them across town. But our goal is for students who go towards that center, we have bilingual. staff.
Okay.
To serve them, try to do most of it there. That's why the model, and again, it's just jump-starting.
With the professional development, and Ms. Kane, I appreciate that explanation, but I've got additional questions. So when the teachers are during the year, when they leave the classroom, when we've got substitutes and they're traveling and they're doing some training, is that not professional development?
Yeah.
Depends on where they're going. Yeah, they're going.
I mean, but that's outside of those days.
Yeah, they can go like to
During
they
the
can go like to
school
a math conference that's not a regular PD day. I'm answering
Yeah,
your question.
so-
So that's outside of the scope of the 3 PD days. However, I want you to look at it like this. Not every math teacher in the district is going to be released to go to the same math conference in the same week, because you could be losing 75 math teachers. No one is going to approve that. So I think the expectation, I heard Ms. Kane say many meetings ago, is that we have to adopt the trainer model, where you send your best teachers, your most effective teachers, they come back and be required to do district-wide. Am I not summarizing what you said correctly? If you all listen to Andrea Kane on first and third Monday, then you will recall the pieces of information.
It may have been a fourth Monday.
But, talk to her on the side. But
And Ms. Westbay, we had some conversation about city council and their budgeting. Is that potential 10 million, is that just off the table?
That's a good question. It wasn't raised today in your joint meeting. There is a transcript though from the dialogue they had, and Mr. Neely, the chief of staff, did go to the podium and say that they were going to try to get a meeting together between the three, so no.
Because if we get that 10 million, we can actually, I think.
We won't get 10
I
million.
think we need to operate like we're not.
But I will say one thing that we ought to consider, and that is that the school board budget is included in the calculation of that 10% reserve. And 10% of the school board's has half of it. So that's 37 million. That really should be allocated for school reserve purposes. And that's, they're predicating a citywide reserve on that. And all I'm saying is, we're only $1.2 million out, and we're asking for a one-time potential. At a minimum, I would ask for and send the message of what you've done here, because you're going to have to explain why you deviated from your original plan from your discussion today with them. That you should send a message that you have taken this tack with a budget that by law has no fund balance. So you're left bare and unable to cover it legally without their help. And so you should predicate this on asking them for at least consideration of the use. And we've identified $1.3 million, 1.15 million, no, 1.3, 1,283,083 of one-time items that are in this budget.
How much?
1,283,000. So we could justify 1,283,000, which gets us right to our bottom line right now of getting us through maintain current service levels. If they would consider giving us a one-time allocation that doesn't roll into the base of that 1.2, if we need it, we don't need to ask for it right now.
Right.
But at least communicate that as the way you approach this budgeting process. I mean, you've made a heck of a statement here in terms of the values and being creative and finding a way to make this work. I mean, what looked like it wasn't going to work at all, I'll tell you in my mind before we started this conversation.
Okay, all right, so here we are. So do we have a consensus on the big one was number 17? So we have a consensus. I know we had 2 people that weren't seeing that.
Yes.
Where are the people that are seeing it? Okay, raise your hands. 1, 2.
Keeping it in there?
Are we keeping it in there?
What's up there right now? What he's got up there?
Professional
Keeping it in there.
development.
Those are two
Yes.
different questions, Mr. Combs.
Keeping it in there. What's on the right side? On the right side.
Is that eliminating?
Mr. Westbay, what's 17 saying? Was that from the original?
The three professional development days,
That's the
yes.
same number from the original?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay. You didn't say it like that the first time.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 people that support that. Correct? All right. So at this point, based on the right side, our Are we saying we've got consensus on the right side? We don't, okay?
I have a question.
All right.
Is this right side eliminating ESL teachers?
Only the 7. There's still 4, isn't there? At $505,000.
I would stay with 5.
I would remind us that, one, there's an OCR settlement out there that we have to comply with. 2, we still I haven't seen up there any proposal to reduce our constituent services fund. I would reduce it down to $2,500. And then also the remainder of the savings that we would have for reconstituting our audit office.
All right.
What does that say?
I mean, it's roughly $500,000, $300,000, so that's $400,000 total savings right there. If you add, whatever you add back to the bilingual, we get
You know, audit. Auditors.
So we're not gonna have
You
a
know, when
department.
you just, the way he's describing, you have 2 people that do the school activity funds audit. And I think repurpose the rest of the position. You've had 1 vacant for a long time. Okay. Not having the director filled, and there was 1 other, and you'd be eliminating 1, right, Ralph?
I'm sorry?
The audit office has 5 positions in it.
Yes.
Please name the
One's vacant.
There's
There's
3
3.
of the director.
3 auditors, administrative support.
So that would leave 2 auditors.
2 auditors.
Is the clerical person still, or will you repurpose it?
Repurposed.
So you just have 2 left. Repurpose 1, that will save us 1 position that we would have filled. So you'd have 2 people left that would do the activity funds, accounts, and all that.
We're responsible, those 2 people would report to the board.
Did we budget for contracting
What money
additional
left?
services?
For the activity fund audits, that would come out of
Okay.
that department's reallocated.
Hold on, sir. All right, let's settle the board member funds. We done had several numbers thrown out. Let's try to get some consensus around.
I say let's start at 7,000.
Okay,
I say 8.
7,500. 7,500.
I say 7,500.
Who supports 7,500?
I support 7,500.
1, 2, 3. Sorry.
Hand up.
All right. Next number that came out was 5. Who supports 5,000? Who supports 5,000?
I support 5.
5,000. You didn't
If
make
we
it.
don't, let me say this. If we don't come to a medium, we have 2 people in this room that have shot at 2,500. We're gonna have to meet those 2 people halfway. This thing is serious.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
point of discussion. There are things, if we have things that need to be done for our constituency, then is there a place for those funds to come outside of our own discretionary funds?
Probably not. Probably not.
Well, maybe Dr. Bennett has some enlightenment. If we have a need that exceeds what our discretionary funds are, then is there an area that we can pull from to facilitate that lacking outside of? Because I mean, my concern is that we have several board members who haven't used any of their discretionary funds at all, and those are the individuals who are pushing to decrease it. Whereas you have other board members who use theirs to the maximum and everywhere in between, because we do have a lot of needs. We do have newsletters that we want going out. We want to make sure that our constituency is informed. We want to make sure that we're able to facilitate them at community meetings and bring in guest speakers or whatever is required. So for those who do not see the significance of that, I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way to reach between the 5,000 and the 7,500 as middle ground before moving forward?
Part of our AIP plan, if you recall, has parent universities, and we said that we would be having parent forums in different areas of the city so that we could take some of that academic burden off of board members who do that kind of thing, because that really is something that academics should be doing anyway. And combined with student support services, we can offer a full round, a variety of sessions for parents across the city.
All right, so I'm just trying to move it. The number now, how many do we have for 5,000? 5,000?
I will go with 5,000.
1, 2.
can we have some discussion around what, you know, when we do professional development, the fact that it is required, what seems to be a reasonable cost for professional development?
Which we're gonna
That's
be required to
mandatory,
do
which-
Yes,
in
we're gonna
this
be
coming
correct.
year. Okay,
Right. It was a law class. We got an email.
the governance thing, right.
That doesn't necessarily mean everybody's gotta go to wherever.
I'm not talking about going
we have a line
anywhere, I'm
item
talking
in our
about
school
bare
board budget for
bones.
that? Or does
What
that-
do we need for professional
Or does that
development?
come from the
If
foundation?
we stay here, if it comes from VSBA.
But your governors from BSB, I'm doing this from memory, don't quote me, I thought it said $8,000 allotment, I thought it said at the bottom of the sheet.
Yeah,
So
that sounds
you just
right.
need- You can set that aside in a big separate pot
Okay.
That would be good.
for,
Not
but she
$8,000
comes
per
here.
person.
No, no,
That's
oh,
for the board
no,
training.
that's for the board. That was just their
board
engagement.
There's somewhere to draw from so that we don't have to come to each of you and beg you all.
Well, that's
to
not
do-
what I was saying. What I'm saying, that's the fee that I saw, remember at the bottom of the sheet
Yeah.
for your governance training.
I mean, just somewhere to draw from that would.
Our entire school division is, I mean, we've spent the last 2.5 hours trying to figure out how to get every nickel to pay for these initiatives that we've spent months working on. And if we can save $100,000 or $110,000 by decreasing what arguably benefits parents, constituents, but it's mainly for us to go do professional development or constituent services. You know, those are competing priorities. And is it more important to make sure that we are able to communicate with families that are now becoming increasingly prevalent in Richmond Public Schools, or is it more important for us to go to a VSBA conference or a Great City Schools conference?
I think it's equally important, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, that's just a fundamental policy disagreement that we have, and so let's just raise our hands and set the number and move on.
All right, so here's can we agree we need to pay for this 8,000 for the, okay, so that's, we got 8 in, all right, that's 8, we got 8. All right, now the next number was individuals, 5,000 apiece, 5,000.
I'm with 5,000.
I'm with 5,000.
Can I get some support on the 5?
5,000.
If we
Okay.
go
All right.
below 5, it's a wrap,
Okay,
ladies and gentlemen.
okay, relax.
I just wanted
You got
to
5
stress
people,
that.
5
Mr.
hands
Cole.
went up, thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, so that's 5 times 9, 45, plus 8, 53.
And that will, are there any ongoing costs? with
No,
these?
no,
Let
no.
me finish the question, please. Are there any ongoing costs as far as board docs? Because I know that was something that was coming out of our discretionary funds as well.
That's all right. That's a line
You got it online this time.
Okay.
That's one of the things they,
And it's still at 10,000.
But wasn't that one of the things that we had underfunded or underfunded on?
yeah, they got it now. Okay, so, where you at, Mr. Westby?
Marking things here so I can let you know what we've got.
All right, well, what, did you get the board number straight?
90,000 right
No,
here.
no. 5 times 9 is 45, plus 8
Plus
is
8.
53.
That means you're
So
spending.
that's what we're keeping.
Okay.
What we're.
So he's trying to back
Oh,
out.
he's backing it out. Okay, good. Okay, that's
That's $90,000.
I'm the best. Okay, all right.
I've got it.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Taylor.
300,000.
Question, the credit cards that we authorize for our administrators as well as their professional development, where is that incorporated in the budget?
I don't know why you say for our professional development list.
I mean, I just want to know where does that fit so that I will know that that's something that comes out of that. I mean, you all, administration does have.
What you're tying to, all the credit card do is pay, you still have to charge it to a line item. So your question
I mean, that's
is,
the same thing without expenditure, that's why
Right.
it came to my
Right.
attention, because when we go on trips, our credit card, the school board credit card is used for our professional development discretionary funds. So I want to know the same thing for the cabinet and the administrators, where exactly is the credit card expenses included as well as
but I'm
the
trying to get you
professional
to stop
development?
saying credit card, just look at where's the professional development line. All the credit cards do is give you a method of payment. You're building it to an account code.
Well, I
So
mean,
your
that's just,
question
I
is-
didn't know that, so, but that's why I put it out there like that, but now that everyone knows what I'm talking about,
where does that factor into, how much money do you all each individually get for professional development, and where is that incorporated into your budget?
It varies department by department, when they have the supplies and professional development. But it's in each area's core budget, we can certainly provide that level of detail.
Okay. Can you give me an example of, say, 5 places in the budget that your professional development is being staffed?
No.
Senior staff? Yeah, like the category.
She's probably gonna be. It's all in professional development. We don't have too much of
Throughout
it.
various boards.
But can you give me an example of, say, a few places on the list that we have before is where your professional development will be included?
I get a cold shoulder from looking at things.
Where everything, this is everything that is being funded through the state, correct?
Well, then this is all the increases of this budget over last year's budget over the year.
So there are additional costs that the district takes on that are not in what's before.
Right, this is just a change, just an increase on the position of 271 million. So this is the, right now represents, what, $9 million increase? $8.9 million to 271. Current year's budget is 262 million. So we're only talking about the $15 million to change, which are increases and decreases. We're not talking about the base $260 million, which is where everything is.
So we're not even considering the base, we're trying to figure out what to remove. Those
You
are
got
all
that
for
earlier.
That was at the beginning.
Okay, that's why I'm just asking for,
That's
give
it.
me
Yeah, that
a
was
few
at the
examples of where professional development would come out, would be attached to. If it's verbally or if it's shown on the chart, can you give me like 4 examples of what your professional development will be included under your umbrella?
Is there a line item for all professional development for administration?
That's what I'm just asking
So
for.
there's a professional development for finance staff, there's a professional development for instructional staff, there's a professional development for IT. Operations.
Some of it comes out of federal funds too.
Right, and that's all embedded in the base.
Right.
That maybe that just seems so broad when you're talking about detail-oriented things, because that wouldn't be, to me, that wouldn't be mandatory. So to have it lumped under that same umbrella is concerning for me.
Okay, and this is, I know from my experience, Ms. Taylor, make a note of that, if that's something you want to investigate, because that happens, that would happen at the beginning.
Well, I'm making a
before we
note
get
now,
to
I
this.
just want them to get it done and get the information to me. So I don't want to have to go through extra, everyone, I made it abundantly clear if you all could provide the information.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Larson?
All right, I am still on the spreadsheet we've been working on all night. Did you all put the audit, did we make a decision about the audit?
You get a number in there,
The 300,000, okay. So does that mean we're committing to these exact position changes, or does that mean that we'll talk about it and work through to come to that end number?
When you take away the funding source for it, then that would trigger an HR action to go with it. So for instance, what you just did, for instance, one of them is gone, you just want to replace it. So the director.
One has been empty for like 2 years.
So you would remove that from as a true line item position. There's
Right.
an FTE holding it.
Right.
The director,
That's kind of an easy one.
Right. The director, you're saying you wouldn't be filling,
Okay.
for example.
Transferring one.
And then you'd be transferring one out to another area, the clerical out, and you effectively be leaving the 2 people.
Okay.
who
I
are-
guess my concern at this point is we have not discussed this as a board. These positions, it's a really small department. I feel like it might be something we need to discuss in closed. So I'm comfortable showing some savings because, especially the one position that hasn't been funded forever, for years. However, I would like to talk through
I would say
the
you would
details
put
of
that
it.
on your June 1st.
Okay.
Well, why don't we just put that as the 300,000 as a target, and then we talk about a plan on how to get there.
Okay, that makes me more comfortable.
The 300,000, in my understanding, was just people that have either retired,
Vacant position.
vacant positions, one person's
So 1% impact is for the transfer out.
It's being transferred to finance, right?
Okay, yeah, I just want to
So
have an
yeah,
opportunity to talk it through.
I think the other piece they need to see is just talking about is Gray's point about the other audits beyond the student activities account. Part of the money you hand was to contract and service the other. That's what I think.
Okay.
Okay, I got a couple other things. With what we're doing, with the items in the green, or I guess maybe just 15 and 5 now, where, you know, we're at this agreement where, okay, we cut those in half, and we're not making the full budget correction this year. We're going at 50%, correct? That's what.
Correct.
Okay, so could we, throughout the year as we're in it, get updates and possibly make the budget corrections, you know, like on your monthly, if you could pull that out and if we could monitor that, that might be an easy way to segue into the budget season for next year. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Yes.
Look like it says 1.3 now. I thought we were down to 1.2. Is that 1.3? Yes.
Last, this right here?
Yeah, what made it go back up?
I'll be back in the bilingual.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
105,000.
And then the last thing is what Ralph was talking about with the one-time funding. If we already have 1.28 million in one-time funding in this, and you know we're making all these changes, I totally agree that it's going to warrant some sort of explanation to City Council. I think the work we've been doing here tonight is really positive. I'm glad we talked everything through. I'm glad the AIP is at the top. I think it's going to send a message to the community and to council. I think we should document it, and I also think it's worth it to ask for that 1.2, which would almost, I mean, it would really close that gap that we have there.
Okay.
You need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
All righty, Mr. Bourne. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, hold up. Yes. Esteemed colleague here.
Two quick things. On the audit, my only concern with backing that money out is Umesh Dallal's office, the city auditor, has done very good work for us right now for free. Yes, we pay for any of his work. And so I wonder if using that money that we allocate for our own internal auditing service, which the merits of which can be debated, if that would be money that we would use to make sure we have ongoing audits from Mr. Dallal and his office, where I think we've gotten it pretty good.
And what we're talking about is certain.
That would be good. What do you think?
Well, no matter who we go through, I think it's important that the org chart reflects that audits report up to the board, because we need that separation. They can't report to the administration because we're auditing functions of the administration. So I think the money needs to stay under the board's budget line if we're contracting out or if we're hiring out. So I don't know exactly how that piece of pie gets sliced up. I just think that the reporting function needs to stay with the board.
And that'll be part of our conversation when we finalize.
Address your policies.
Right, because we have to address the policy, but now it's become a policy change also.
Yeah, I mean, I just want us to be thinking about that while we're.
Okay.
So one more follow-up, and I'll be quiet about it, but the 2% raise, I just want to make sure that, can we perhaps just get a consensus or see if people would for that or not? Have we been?
Okay, we can do it again.
Do we get a
No, we did not specifically ask that question because we stopped after who was in for the 3 people.
Yeah, the 3 people. Okay. Just hear me out and I'll shut up about it. But 2% keeps us online with the counties. We've got to get professional development working the way we want it to work before we go and increase lost opportunity because, quite frankly, I've already heard from a lot of teachers that are not enamored with professional development as it is. And if we're not going to be giving a commensurate raise to what the counties are doing, that looks like we're going backwards, in my view. Looks like we're going backwards instead of forwards. So I would say this year, get professional development under control and working the way we want it to, and do the 2% raise. And that's the last time I'll say anything.
All right, you support what Mr. Sturman is saying, let's see your hand.
I support half of what he's saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the
Okay.
consensus, what was the question?
2%
Mr. Sturman
raise.
is still on here.
2% raise.
2% raise. All right,
I support getting our
okay.
PD.
All right, thank
All
you,
right,
Mr.
thank
Sturman,
you.
we appreciate it. Mr. Taylor,
So did we get it? Cause I,
No.
oh, okay.
Good. That was just, I was going to speak to that.
okay, all right, Mr. Bourne.
Mr. Chairman, if the time is right and the hour is correct, I would move that we adopt as amended, as reflected in the spreadsheet before us, fiscal year 2016, 2017? 15-16 budget.
Second.
I
All
still
right,
have
good.
some.
Hold on, that's what we're getting ready to say. Mr. Webb, there you go, Mr. Webb, make sure we're clear, and you're clear on whatever it is.
Okay. I just want to point out, these items here are marked in white with red lettering out of that original list. Those are the three that we cut in half. So while we've got a 1 point bottom line, 3 million shortfall over here, to that we need to add that million, because we cut it in half, that's 1.3 million, and then we've got to add 3,288,000 to that number, which really takes us to 5.236 million. So that's how much we're looking to cover out of next year's budget. If we do all those things down through number 5, we're going to have to look at how we can trim some things wherever possible next year and do your monthly report of giving you a monitor of where that is. But I just want to make sure you understand that that's the magnitude of where we are with the bottom line on this. So with
From
the,
vacancy savings, we were looking for half of the amount that was suggested to be budgeted.
right. Plus that $1.3 million deficit right there on top of it.
And if we do that, what percentage of total FTEs are we talking that we're not budgeting?
What percent of what?
Yeah, what are the vacancy savings?
What percentage are we not budgeting? Is it 3%? Is it 5%?
5 million on the 271 million.
So we're within an acceptable. Do you know what I'm, like Henrico County government only budgets 97% of their FTEs.
Oh, right, I see what you're saying. So that's 2% of the budget roughly. It's
So we're-
1.9%.
So we are budgeting 98%, which is within an acceptable.
Right.
Okay.
We're hoping to have 1.9% contingency factor remaining.
All right. Great job.
The motion also needs to include the 2016-2020 CIP budget.
Okay.
We already approved that.
I just double checked.
Not
with
as
Mr.
an
Prince.
option.
It needs to be adopted as well.
Okay.
Have we seen it?
Yeah, I think we went through that.
It's the same budget we've been seeing.
We just.
Do you want to go back and do it all?
It's only 9 o'clock.
2016.
2016.
I'll move that we adopt the FY 2016 operating budget and the 2016 through 2020 CIP.
Okay.
Hey, Tommy, are you prepared?
Just adding that.
CIP
I just want to, so the motion is to adopt as amended the 2015-2016 general fund and the 2016 to 2020 CIP budgets. The motion is made by Mr. Bourne and seconded by Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Ready? Mr. Sturman?
No.
Ms. Gray? Yes. Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor?
So your vote on the budget, Ms. Taylor?
Taylor.
Mrs. Harris Mohammed,
How much time do I have to think about it? Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Pinkney.
You yelled at me once today. I don't appreciate that. We'll have a talk. I hope the camera's still rolling. Yeah, I'm talking to my son when I get home.
Seriously, the CIP, we're not building students.
So that's just, that money that you're talking about getting now is
For maintenance, that's regular upkeep.
you all agree on an option for the other stuff, that's a whole different conversation.
That could be a
It's not regular
secondary
capital.
conversation. That's in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, there's 18.3 million in the budget.
That's all right.
Ms. Larson.
Okay, excuse me, this is important, remember, we're still on camera.
Let me, Ms. Epps,
Yes, sir.
Are we still in the middle of a vote?
$8 million for everyday repairs, and $18 million for planning purposes, design and all that other stuff.
That's a
what you got.
yes.
But it's planning, it's not building yet.
It's as long as we plan it.
But a new elementary now is 35 million and a new middle is 50.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Wow.
Budget work session. Now stands adjourned. Thank you all very much. Special thanks to everyone who went to 2 meetings.
I'll check with Andy.